Welcome to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I'm your host, Simone Morris, and I have a passion for empowering others to take responsibility for their careers. Yes, I've written several books on owning your career and am loving hosting this podcast. This podcast is for you if you're willing to make a shift to the driver's seat in your career. We feature leaders who inspire, empower, and motivate you for consistent career action for results. Please continue to join us every Sunday when a new episode is released. Let's get into this week's show. Welcome to this episode of the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I'm super excited today because I have with us a guest, Jacqueline Twilley of Zero Gap, who is going to share her formula for owning her career. And so let me just welcome Jacqueline to the show. Welcome.
Thank you, Simone. I'm very excited to be here.
Yes. Well, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're currently doing.
Yes, so I am a woman who is originally from South Louisiana. A lot of my life experience were shaped in that state, which is a really beautiful place full of culture, great food, fun people, and lots of resilience due to something called hurricanes. So I spent my formative years there, finished undergraduate school there, and then started my career in advertising and publishing in Atlanta, a city that is my second home, very near and dear to my heart. So I'm an auntie. I love my nieces and nephews. I speak to them almost every day, multiple times a day.
Awesome.
I'm their biggest cheerleader. And I love to cook. That's just a part of my culture and part of what makes me me. And so yeah, that's a little bit of the backstory outside of what you see on LinkedIn.
Oh, awesome. So, well, first I want to know, what's your favorite dish to cook?
So it depends on the season.
Okay.
I love in the spring, early spring and early fall, red beans and rice on Mondays is still ingrained in my blood. As soon as it gets warm, cool enough, I want that warm food to like fill my body and soul. And then in the summer, I go for more salads, light salads. My great grandfather had a garden and he loved green tomatoes. So I've taken a spin on that. And also in the summertime, a succotash that my mom cooks. So I have seasonal meals that I really cling to.
Oh, I love that. I just started a community garden and, I'm upset because I think the rabbits or squirrels ate my butternut squash, but, that's been, oh my
It was
goodness.
a
But
feast for them.
yeah, oh, I had a vision. And so I love that. The other thing, Jacqueline, is that I heard resilience. And how has resilience informed you as a leader or impacted you on your career journey?
Yeah, such a great question. So I do a lot of work around the topic of resilience, in part because I grew up in an area that bounces back from any type of storm over and over again. It's just built into the culture that when a storm comes, it can destroy everything and you rebuild. And
Mm.
so resilience is really important to me because I didn't know I was being taught resiliency from an early age. And that ability to withstand a challenge, even if you're knocked flat on your back, to be able to tap into community, tap into your resources, and know that you have it in you to rebuild, no matter how many times you're knocked down, has been something that's informed me. It really helped shape how I look at challenges and how I'm able to pivot and not stay married to an idea or a version of myself that I've outgrown.
Mm, What did you want to be when you were growing up? What was your
I
dream?
My dream was to be an attorney. That was my
Ah,
mother's dream for me. And when I got to undergrad, that was my major, pre-law. And after my second F in political science, I was like, yeah, this is not gonna work. So I went to
Wait, what about the resilience?
well, so the thing with resilience is you also have to look at the data. and trust your intuition. And that's something that because I grew up in a religious background, there is something that we used to say there's like a fire that's shut up in your bones. I
Mm,
equate that to um having an intuition, right?
mm,
That brain in your stomach that tells you you better investigate this. So
mm,
I went to career services and I said I want to take an aptitude test. I want to make sure that this is something that I should be pursuing because I've always been great at history, and so it's not, something wasn't right. I was like, I should be doing much better in these classes. And so when I did the aptitude test, I did a series of them. I learned about the topic of marketing, which is something that wasn't really in my family's vocabulary. I'm a
mm,
first generation college grad. So a
mhm,
lot of things I had to figure out along the way. And yeah, so once I found out about marketing, I was like, oh, I think I can do this. And I excelled. And so that's
mm,
where also where I started to realize the power of alignment. And my mom has always spoke about being in tune to what you should be doing. And so even though I have resilience and I can bounce back from anything, there's also something that's called resonance and dissonance. And getting two F's in a subject that I should have excelled in was a signal of dissonance that I was not in alignment with where I should be headed.
mm. Powerful, so powerful. So tell me, and by the way, I also did aptitude test. Later on in my career, I did the Johnson O'Connor Research Foundation. When I was at a crossroad, you can do an aptitude test to give you
Mm.
clarity on the path forward. So I love that you did that and said yes to what was ahead for you. So tell me, since we talk about resilience, we talk about alignment, let's go to the place of the formula. When you think about your career and what has worked well and what hasn't and what you've learned along the way, what would you say Jacqueline's formula for owning her career is?
So my formula is something that I formalize now, but early in my career, I didn't know it was a formula. It was just kind of leaning on different mentors and coaches that I had engaged with in my early 20s. And then later, probably like 5 years ago, is when I started really having a moment of deep reflection and said, oh, this is the formula. So the formula is latte, um,
Mm,
kind of like coffee. And I talk about this in two of my books, but essentially it's look, anticipate, think, talk, and evaluate. And so the when I look back over my early career to where I am now, that's always been the thing that's helped me. And Walt Disney has this quote that says, we keep being curious, and curiosity leads us down new paths. And so when I look at Latte and that first stop on that track, look is where I was able to do some research, to dive, to be curious. And every time I've tapped into that curiosity as part of my formula, it's led me to something even greater than what I have imagined for myself.
mm, mm. So tell me about the driver's seat. This show is about being in the driver's seat, being very hands-on, being very intentional about your
Mhm.
career. So you're going down the road and attorney is, an exit and you decide not to get off and continue towards marketing. Tell me about, when did you realize that you were first in the driver's seat in your career?
I have always known that I was in the driver's seat because that's the way I was raised, that
Mm,
I had agency and that I was in charge of my decisions. So while I can't really be in charge of how anyone else treats me or how they act towards me, I am always in control of how I respond. And if I choose to react or respond, that was a decision that I had to make. So growing up, that was something that I've always known to be true. And so when I got to my early career, my first job was with Gannett, and Gannett owns USA Today. That's when I realized I need to find something that can help and guide me. And there's a woman named Donna. I don't know how I found her, perhaps LinkedIn. This was almost 17, 18 years ago. She was my first professional coach. And this is before coaching was as prevalent as it is now. So I'm quite amazed that I found her, but I remember getting my packet in the mail, a binder that had physical CDs of the coaching sessions, and then I would get online on Skype and do some sessions. And I had a workbook that was also mailed to me in this big old black binder. So those types of instances, I knew I was always in the driver's seat. That way I knew I needed to go out and get the resources that I needed. And with that, my mother has always been really supportive because she got me an Audible subscription when Audible was CDs. And she
Mm.
said that she had heard somewhere, read somewhere that listening to an audiobook a day in your commute was the equivalent to getting an additional master's degree.
Mm.
So I had a steady rotation of audiobooks, and that was another thing that my mother invested in me. So although I was a first generation college graduate, my mom had the wisdom of ages that was passed down to her from her mentors and her ancestors. And that is what just innately gave me this confidence to be like, I'm always driving.
Mm. So powerful. It's so awesome to have an amazing mom. Oh, that is awesome. Audible on CD and coaching. You know, a lot of us culturally, coaching wasn't offered or a thing. So coaching is really game changing. I say that because I'm a coach, but I've also experienced being a client, and I realize the impact. And you talk about going way back, the impact of coaching on your career.
Yes. Yeah, and it's just been so beautiful. I tell people often when they speak to me about coaching, like, oh, convince me that I need a coach. No one can convince you that you need a
Mm.
coach because if you're not in a position where you have the desire to put in the work, you can have the best coach in the world, but you won't get results because you have to have ownership of that process as well. So, I've always believed in it. No one's ever had to convince me of it, and
Mhm.
that's why I've experienced such phenomenal results with all of the coaches I've worked with throughout the years.
Awesome. I love that. When we talk about resources, so we've talked about coaching as a resource. We talked about your amazing mom
Yes.
as a resource, Audible as a resource. Are there any other resources that come to mind that have helped you to level up in your career?
Yeah, so thinking back, professional associations have been a game changer for me. I mentioned that when I switched my major from pre-law to marketing, I experienced a lot of success. So the first professional association that I was a part of was the American Marketing Association,
Mm.
and I was the vice president of my collegiate chapter. I was also the president of my sorority undergrad chapter for 3 years. I joined as a freshman, which I don't know how I got that exception, but I'm a member of Sigma Gamma Rho sorority, and they poured a lot into me in terms of professional development and professional readiness. So those professional associations, I think, cannot be overstated enough. And then along the way, through working with coaches, I picked up so many other resources, such as for one period of my life, for 8 years of my life, I didn't own a TV. So I'm a
Mm.
voracious reader. I also love audiobooks, and I was subscribed to the Wall Street Journal for many years. And that's how I started my day. And I've made a habit to focus on resources that support my well-being, and I'm tapping into those even more. So that's looking at the type of water that I drink. I do a lot of practices to help me recalibrate because I travel a lot. So going to dive into a sensory deprivation pod, which is pretty much floating in over 1,000 pounds of Epsom salt for an
Mm.
hour
Mm.
as a form of relaxation. I do IV drips when I travel a lot to make sure I'm not dehydrated. So that's going to a facility, and they're readily available in New York. They're pretty much on every corner. Where they put an IV into you and they put all the vitamins and nutrients and all of the good stuff into your body. I travel with wellness packets, and really right now I'm getting back into a practice of eating seasonally. So eating foods that are fresh in season and stopping at farmers markets to optimize my well-being because when we feel good, we're able to show up and perform better at work. So those are some of the resources that I use day to day now. in addition to those really practical professional development, it's equally as important to tap into the physical side to make sure we're optimizing.
I love that. Oh, that's so great. I'm curious about, you said the type of water you drink. So let's start there.
Yeah, so um I am not the expert, but I've read a lot of books on what we put into our bodies. So because I love Audible, um I deep dive a lot into what's good for the body. The books that I've just finished reading are about the blue zones. Um, so not specifically the water, but I do drink alkaline water. And when I don't get a chance to have alkaline water, I put lime or lemon in the water because it naturally alkalizes it. But those are some of the secrets to productivity. I had a dinner last November and I just returned to New York from Dubai, less than 24 hours off the plane. I'm hosting this big dinner. And someone says, "How do you do it? Like, you have been all over the world." And I said, "I just try to take care of my body. I've really not, knock on wood and praises to God, I have not gotten sick because I travel with a goodie bag. So I use this natural source vitamins, these mega vitamins. I have a travel tonic that's mixed with ancient herbs, an Ayurvedic practice tonic. And so I just mix all of these things into my routine. I also travel with a weighted sleep mask because it blacks out any sunlight and it allows me to sleep better. And then also, it is worth when you travel a lot to fly with the same airline so you can have status and get those upgrades because the seats make a big difference
Mhm.
in how I travel. So beyond the water, in which I drink a lot of water, I probably drink too much water a day, to be honest with you, which is a thing, but my body craves it because I travel so much.
Wow. And then, curiously, not curiously, interestingly, someone I'm connected to, Jennifer Darling on Facebook, she was talking about the IV. And I haven't tried that, but I think I'm going to try that IV drip for hydration.
Yeah, that's something that I started. I think the first time I tried it was 2018, 2019. One of my mentors, Susie Batiste, she's the one who introduced me to the power of the electrolytes being in your body and the IV drips. So she's been an incredible mentor, and really, she's been a person who's helped me to hone in on making sure that I'm taking care of myself physically and taking care of my spiritual maintenance in order to be able to succeed in business.
Love that. You've inspired me to do better with the wellness, with the balance of the wellness. Thank you for that. Is that also from your mom?
No, so Susie started a company called Poopery. And I met her, I think, in 2017 when I lived in Dallas, Texas. And so she gave me a lot of those principles. Susie's story is incredible. You can look it up. She went through a few bankruptcies before she started Poopery. And I think she was on Forbes as a self-made billionaire. But part of what she said helped turn her life around was cleaning out the spiritual junk.
Mm.
And she has a program called Alive OS. And so when I went through her mentorship program, Alive, I'm actually, you all can't see this, but this t-shirt is a gift from Susie. It's not personal, it's physics.
Mm.
And so I got that from Susie. And along the same time that I started working with Susie and her mentorship, I started reading a book by Layla Delia. It's called Vibrate Higher Daily, Live Your
Mm.
Power. And Layla's work and Susie's work go hand in hand. And I've been in Layla's program for a few years now also, and she also speaks of the same things of making sure that you're taking care of your spiritual well-being, being aware of your energy and where that energy is directed to. And that goes back to the resilience and alignment because I'm so attuned and I'm into these spiritual practices, whenever I feel off, it's a big signal for me to pause and to investigate and say, what's going on here? Should I be going this route in business? Should I be working on this project right now? And because I have that alignment, like that intuition in my gut, I'm able to say, oh, I'm not in alignment. I'm in dissonance. Let me readjust and get over to resonance and get into alignment and flow.
Mm. In the latte formula, I just want to acknowledge what I noticed a lot around an investment into your professional, personal growth. That's part of your latte formula.
A lot of it is a self-awareness piece. Because without the self-awareness in terms of the formula, then you're chasing someone else's dream or you're executing someone else's dream. And so to really be in the driver's seat, you have to have that awareness of who you are, where you've come from, and where you're going. And that does shift from time to time. Where we were, let's say 18 months ago can be significantly different. And I hope it is, because that's an indicator that we're growing. And so that latte formula is in part getting into a level of self-awareness where you can pivot and adjust. And when you pivot and adjust, there are going to be some roadblocks along the way. Things aren't just going to flow smoothly. And that's where that resilience comes in, where you're able to say, yes, I need to pivot and adjust. And that might take time, that might take money. And then definitely, in most cases, it requires you to step out of your comfort zone because you've mastered a certain thing and now you need to learn something new. And so that's where the resilience comes in with that latte formula. And that's part of why I think it's worked for me for so many years.
Awesome. Well, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show. I could talk to you forever, but I'll
Likewise.
be respectful. So tell our listeners how they can stay connected with you. Talk a little bit about the books that you mentioned as we wrap up.
Yeah, so I've written 3 books. The first one is called Navigating the Career Jungle. And the second book is Don't Leave Money on the Table, Negotiation Strategies. That's where I introduced the Latte negotiation framework to the world. And in my third book, Dear Resilient Leader, A Guide for Underrepresented Leaders, I explored that latte concept even further and take people through how do you take the latte and apply it to various areas of your life. So I'm mostly on LinkedIn. That's my favorite place to hang out online, but I'm mostly around the internet at Jacqueline Twilley on everything. And yeah, I'm so thrilled to be on this podcast. I love your podcast. You always have the best guests. Oprah says, surround yourself with people who are going to push you to be the highest and grandest version of yourself. And your guests are a reflection of you and how you cultivate community and surround yourself with amazing people. So thank you for letting me join the club.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for pouring into me. I can't think of a better way to end the episode, and I may have to rearrange you in the mix. So it happens quicker in the season. It's been such a pleasure to hear more about your story, pick up on some resources and tips that you've shared with the audience. We thank you so much for your generosity in showing up authentically and just dropping the mic. Quite honestly, I'm appreciative. So thank you, Jacqueline, for being a guest on the Power of Owning Your Career podcast.
Thank you.
I sincerely hope that you enjoyed this week's empowering career story on the podcast. If you did, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Wherever you listen to the podcast, be sure that you are subscribing and that you rate and review the podcast. It's so important as we continue to spread the word of career empowerment. In addition, you can head over to the LinkedIn platform and join the Power of Owning Your Career discussion group. There you can have access to the guests who have been on the podcast, as well as others listening to the podcast, as well as myself, where we can continue the conversation. I hope to see you on that platform. You can also email me at pooyc@simonemorris.com if you have a suggestion for guest or a message that you want me to hear personally. Thanks so much, and make it an inspiring, empowering week in your career.